Welcome to Sidetrack, your sci-fi TV and movie channel. So recently I did a video about how Amazon is buying MGM. And with that, they're buying the rights to Stargate. And how that is leading to many rumours that Stargate might actually make a return. In this video I'm going to talk about if one of our favourite TV shows really does make a return, what might it actually look like? So if you're new to the channel, please like, subscribe, hit that bell notification. It really helps us out. So first of all, there's the sequel kind of series, just carrying on from where SGU left off. Maybe not within the SGU universe, we might not find out what happened to the Destiny guys, but on Earth, 14 years or so after SG-1 finished, Amanda Tappin and Michael Shanks have apparently already been approached and asked about maybe doing some directing and maybe appearing in front of the screen too. And both have openly talked about it. Brad Wright has also openly talked about his plans for this show. So at the moment, that seems like the most likely scenario, that this new TV show will be not a reboot, but a sequel, 14 years after SG-1 ended. We might find out where the Tauri fleet is now. We saw over the 10 years of SG-1 that we were able to build a small but very capable fleet of battle cruisers. Where are we now? We know that Stargate Atlantis ended with basically the Atlantis City landing in San Francisco Bay. So we can assume maybe then that everybody on the planet knows about the Stargate program now, that it's no longer a secret. And in that case, how has that changed the world? We also know that we basically have access to several elements of Asgard technology, even though the Holy Grail, the database of the Asgard technology, was lost. We still had access to several Asgard technologies, including shields, weapons, etc. We don't know how much that will have pushed us on. And obviously, like I just mentioned, Stargate Atlantis is sat in the middle of San Francisco Bay. So, we have a whole city of ancient technology to explore and to really, where it was quite a small team in Stargate Atlantis exploring this city, now they would have the entire resources of the planet to find out what's going on this this floating city. I'm fascinated to see how the relationship between the Jaffa Nation and the Tauri has continued to grow, because it's not been exactly smooth. I'd also love to see, I genuinely believe there will probably be civil wars within the Jaffa Nation. That's something we could explore. And you've also got the Lucian Alliance and their rise to power as the, they took up the vacuum of power after the Goa'uld collapsed. All of these would make really interesting side storylines and plots that twist through the series. But you really need a new protagonist, a new bad guy. And if Stargate SG-1 taught us anything, they're pretty good at that. The Goa'uld started to become a little bit old. We brought in the System Lords. That can be a bit old. We saw the rise of Anubis. We saw the rise of the Replicators. We obviously saw the Ori. And so on. So this was a show that kept reinventing itself, and Brad Wright was really good at that. So I don't see any reason why, using the breadth of human history, which is what you've done throughout Stargate. I mean, you've got a lot of these bad guys and nemesis aren't really, brought up of nowhere. Maybe the Ori and the Replicators were, but they all actually had seeds from human history. And there's a lot of history they haven't touched yet. So, they focus on the Egyptians and Egyptian history. We have seen some Roman and things like that, but there's a lot of more they could explore, and they're not new bad guys they could certainly come up with.
The rise to power of the Lucian Alliance was never really explained. Perhaps there is some dark figure behind that, some leader that we haven't actually seen yet. Perhaps that could be the new protagonist.
So I see that as the most likely scenario for a new series, but there are obviously other ideas, and I've had loads of comments, and some of them were just fantastic. One in particular was sort of like a prequel series. Now, I immediately go, I don't like prequels. I think they mess with canon. Star Trek Enterprise is the prime example for me. It's so dangerous, and you're so restrictive for what you can do with the series, because you've got so much canon that follows after it that you can't mess about with. So it limits what you can do. And what ends up happening is that you do something with a series that is exciting and interesting, and it changes canon. Like the Xindi attack on Earth. Never ever been mentioned in Star Trek before, but there's a massive gouge right through the middle of the, of America's southwest or whatever. That actually appeared in the first J.J. Abrams Star Trek. You know, that's what young James T. Kirk shoots the car off into. It's the Xindi attack. But, you know, never mentioned Star Trek before. Enterprise thought of it. They wrote it into the story. It, you know, was the catalyst for how the Federation came together in lots of ways. But it had never been mentioned in canon. So, you know, there's lots of dangers doing a prequel. But this idea would be so far before SG-1 that it doesn't really risk messing with canon, because the idea is to base a series on the Ancients, and the Ancients building the Stargate network in the first place. I actually find that really fascinating. I want to see sort of why did they build the Stargate? Maybe why did they launch the Destiny? And we could even see maybe that. We could maybe even see a series that sort of jumps between ancient history and maybe doesn't follow like one clear storyline, maybe, that it sort of jumps through thousands of years potentially. How did the Ancients get so powerful? How did the Ancients end up ascending? You know, these are all stories that could be really, really interesting. And then they could always tie into SG-1, Stargate Atlantis episodes. Because, you know, how many times did we see something the Atlanteans did, or the Atlanteans set up, or, you know, the Ancients' weapons, or blah, 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 blah. You know, how many times did we see that? And it could tie into so many SG-1 episodes. So I think that could be a fascinating prequel series that wouldn't risk messing with canon. It could actually use canon. And that'd be very, very interesting to me. The third possibility that I can see is a future series. So set the new SG series 100 years into the future. Now, there are so many other things with that could be really, really interesting. Obviously, all the stuff I talked about, how we know with the Jaffa Nation, where is the Jaffa Nation? Where is the Lucian Lines? All of that stuff that I talked about with just a sort of a modern sequel sort of series, like the Next Generation type series. We could take that whole thing to a whole other level. Has Earth and humans become the third race that the Asgard always talked about? We could go out into the universe and start bringing all of these human colonies that are spread amongst the galaxy back together again. We could create an alliance, a federation of people that spreads across the entire galaxy. But in both that, this future 100 years in the future series, or like I said, the Next Generation sort of style sequel series, both have to address the Goa'uld. Now, the Goa'uld are one of the most important bad guys in Stargate. They're really the epitome of Stargate. Where are they now? Because, you know, these people aren't going to have just disappeared into the nothingness. They're going to have some sort of future. They're sneaky, they're selfish, and they're intelligent. You know, we saw that with like Baal and things. These aren't stupid creatures. They're not going to have just disappeared into the nothingness forever. There is going to be a comeback. And when they come back, I'd love to see how they do that. Also, with either of these two series, either 100 years into the future or sort of the Next Generation, sort of roughly our timeline series, you've also got the problem that, like I said, humanity would know about this now. But more importantly, the rest of the universe knows about humanity. We have stepped in enough dog poop around the universe that everybody knows we're here. And they are going to come and threaten us and attack us. How would we cope with that? Are we going to see Earth defences, an Earth fleet, like I've said? All these lovely things that we like in Star Trek, we're going to get to hopefully see in Stargate. The technology, the ships, all this stuff that we really, really love to, as geeks, to get our teeth into.
But there is a big risk. Stargate obviously isn't Star Trek. It is different. And this series that I'm talking about here would fundamentally change what Stargate is. I'm not 100% certain I want to see that.
But with that scenario, with us building new ships, a new fleet, stepping out into the universe, you've then got the danger of us butting heads with the Lucian Alliance, with the Jaffa Nation. And like I said earlier, these are all interesting storylines of how our relationship would build with those powers. But I don't think it would make an interesting long-term series. We need a threat, like an Anubis, like an Replicators, that comes in 2 or 3 episodes a series and is a real danger to the entire galaxy sort of thing. Out of all of the comments I got though, this was by far the best one. We want to see Walter as the commander. And I love that idea. Because it's like we talked about maybe Amanda Tapping with the commander, maybe Michael Shanks with the commander, but how about Walter? What a fantastic idea. But would it be funnier to have Walter back, but actually doing exactly the same job? Still saying Chevron 1 encoded, Chevron 2 encoded, still sat there doing it. Would that be funnier? I'm going to go for the latter. I want to see him just sat there punching buttons in still. But that'd be amazing. So what do I think is the most likely scenario here? I think the Next Generation style of new series is the most likely. It'll be set in roughly the same timeline as now. It'll be a whole new team. I think they will try to bring back Teal'c for at least a few episodes. I think Amanda Tapping is a very successful and very in-demand TV director now, and I think they would love to get her back onto the series, behind the camera and at least in part in front of it. And I know Daniel Jackson, Michael Shanks, loves this series and would come back in a heartbeat. He has said so on multiple occasions in interviews. Based on Earth, using the Stargates, but also the new ships being built, a new relationship with the Jaffa and the Lucian Alliance, new threats, and potentially a whole new younger team. Brad Wright keeps talking about a younger team, something that's going to sort of like make sense to a younger audience. And that is another thing as well. There's a lot of the comments I had about a reboot or a new series of Stargate said over and over again, for the love of God, don't make it woke. Now, that's not a term I like. I don't like this term, but it's said an awful lot by my subscribers and people who watch the video. And that basically means it's try not to make the series too much like, we don't have to have every single gender, transgender, every single culture and race within the team. We don't have to have everybody represented. It doesn't have to be this type of series. But I would say sci-fi, or good sci-fi, reflects culture. They tell stories that have a moral without you necessarily knowing that you're being taught a moral, if that makes sense. That's when sci-fi is at its best. It's not just laser beams and weapons. It's, you come away going, there's layers to the story. Stargate did that. Star Trek was the best at doing that. Even Star Wars to a degree. You know, the best sci-fi always does that. And I want to see a new Stargate series do exactly the same. So, all right, I don't want it forced on it. I want it to be part of the series. I want it to be, you know, I want it to be relevant to the story. But I have absolutely no problem with all elements of our modern culture being represented in this new TV series. So that makes it a bit woke. So be it, as long as it makes sense to the story. How likely do I think this is? I actually think this is incredibly likely. I know this original story come from Giant Freaking Robot, and they are basically a bunch of clickbaiters. But the story does make sense. Amazon, like Disney Plus, like Netflix, is screaming out for new content. After the James Bond franchise, MGM's most successful and most profitable entity, thing they own, is Stargate. So as soon as Amazon get their hands on this channel, and it's not fully, even though Amazon and MGM are starting to work together already, there's an MGM channel on Amazon. It's the only place you can get Stargate now. I have to pay for it because I'm watching all of SGU again. Even though they're already working together, Amazon does not yet quite own MGM. I think as soon as they do, and MGM start getting hold of a bit of Amazon money, we will see new projects. But more importantly, we will get them looking back at their back catalogue. We will get MGM looking at, right, what do we own? And now we're not crippled by debt. What can we make? And I think Stargate will be very, very high up on that list. If you would love to buy this t-shirt that is modelled by myself, you can. Tell me in the comments where you think this little quote came from. If you're British, you're probably going to have a good idea. If you're American, you might have to Google it. And there's a link in the description where you can purchase one all for yourself.